Chapter 1 Reality. It was a rainy and cold September day in London, a mostly cloudy city that is always trying to stay awake. The commute in and out of the city can become a nightmare for many, and for some reason, most faces can be seen tired and deep into their own thoughts. Tube stations are overwhelming during peak times, watching the sea of people march together like soldiers to be on time for work. To many, the scarier part of the day is to face peak times. It can become a challenge, especially in the busy London tube. People crowd around the doors of the London Underground, and there is a sense of urgency to board the train as quickly as possible, especially during those peak hours. "You have to be kidding me," a woman commented while she was trying to get on a train without success. She was probably already late for work behind a long line of people. Big cities have adopted systems to encourage citizens to use alternative ways of transportation instead of cars, in order to reduce traffic jam and pollution. But there is a high number of people on the rise commuting for work, causing stress and occasional delays. Isabel Hearn was seated at the end corner of the tube. Her tea and newspaper made her commute a lot easier. It was more distracting and entertaining than watching the constant arguments between the disgruntled passengers. She felt fortunate that her train was almost always empty from the beginning of her journey, and that allowed her the chance to frequently use the same seat every day. Taking her driver would have been a lot less complicated, but she really needed the fresh air and the real perspective of human life. She was already using her reading glasses and browsing through the newspaper with some headlines about advances in genetics with mitochondrial DNA. As a doctor, she found this news fascinating and even exciting, allowing for new technologies and scientific developments to work like doorways to well-deserved advances and knowledge. Some people on the train argued about the crazy weather, with a usual tendency to change from a sunny day to a rough and rainy one. They were debating between global warming and the closeness of the Earth to the Sun as probable causes. Scottish weather had especially been on the news all week. When she left home, the weather looked gray and damp. The day was probably going to be a rainy one, and she went back to her house to grab an umbrella. But even when she thought the umbrella was all she needed, there was a sensation that something important was missing. But what was it? Isabel double-checked everything to make sure nothing was left behind, but she still had the feeling of emptiness. She took a deep breath and knew that whatever it was missing might come back to her mind eventually. She checked her calendar, handbag, mobile phone, but that didn't help. The feeling was still there. "What am I missing?" she thought. "Today is not a different day," she added. On the train, she could always recognize some of the frequent commuters taking the same route every single day at the same time. Waiting for the tube early in the morning was always cold and even lonely. Isabel was an early riser, and being early for work allowed her time to organize and prepare for the day. The clinic was always busy, and getting there a few hours before everyone else gave her a good head start. The train made another stop, and this time she was focused on the newspaper, but a soft breeze came inside. She felt it. There was a familiar fragrance surrounding her, something she remembered well, and brought memories of what was an important part of her life. This time she couldn't be imagining things. It had to be real. She could feel it. With that, she immediately got up off her seat and looked in the direction of the door. People were making their way inside and walking through the crowd. Isabel stared at every one of them, knowing what to look for. Her heart rate was accelerated with the suspense of what she could see. She felt the rush of her blood running through her veins. She knew there was something there. Nobody was really looking at her. Everyone was focused on getting a seat, reading the news, checking their mobile phones, or even trying to get a fast sip of their coffee. The seconds seemed eternal, and the alarm of the door made a loud sound signaling the two was about to leave when she saw him. Tall, dark hair, black eyes, dressing on jeans with a jacket, he seemed as if he was looking for something too. Isabel felt her heart stopped. It was him. But how? What just happened? Was this a dream or it was real? Maybe another painful dream. She was not sure. It was him, physically present. She could feel his peculiar, familiar, and intoxicating smell. Immediately she thought, this can't be possible. Alex, you are dead. He then turned towards her, and they stared at each other. It was an intense dream, and she was kissing him passionately. He kissed her back. Their naked bodies were interlaced with each other, and the heat was palpable. Their sweat felt warm. He kissed her chest, and she was holding his head and smelling his hair. He had that particular smell that drove her crazy by just being near him. Their hands interlaced tightly as if they knew their time together was unique and precious. She could hear his heartbeat and feel his body shivering by feeling hers. It was magical. I love you and I will love you for the whole universal eternity, for the length of this cycle and the next one, Makala, he said. And I will also love you forever, Zagreus, she said. They continued kissing and moving around the bed with passion and need for each other. They were finally together again, but ignoring what was about to come. Probably if they knew, this moment would have never happened.